said I oppose fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
2020 is almost over. Just a few hours to go before we say goodbye to the worst year in the history of years ever. As we all know, 2020 has been nothing but complete disappointment, complete chaos, complete insanity. And to be honest, I'm not sure 2021 is going to be much better, but whatever we're finally done with this year, it can only go one way from here, and that is up. Today we find out in Los Angeles, people are now getting arrested for attending super spreader events. What's a super spreader event? Well, it's an event that has to do with any congregation that has more than 10 people. Remember, these are the same sheriffs who said very clearly just a few weeks to a month ago that we will not be defying, or we will be defying the governor's orders, and we will not be enforcing these lockdowns. We are not going to send our deputies out to go and arrest people for hanging out or violating these COVID lockdowns. Well, here we are just a couple months later, and in LA County, they've already started, and it's infuriating people beyond belief. Did Governor Newsom just sign his political death wish? And is New York and Governor Cuomo next? God, you gotta love these Democrat-run cities, said nobody ever. Let's head over to the Keyboard Warrior Cam and see what the American people have to say about the insanity of it all and how furious they are that the sheriff's department are now actually arresting people. Is this even legal? I thought it was completely unconstitutional as far as I was concerned, but the governors seem to know best and they're completely abusing their powers. Let's head over to the Keyboard Warrior Cam now. So as you can see here, I woke up this morning to find out that 235 arrests over the course of December in a targeted effort to enforce coronavirus restrictions as the region continues to see a dangerous surge in COVID-19 cases. This all has to do with California. What is going on in California that they cannot get a handle on the virus situation? I mean, this state has been so badly locked down. They've had the strictest lockdowns, yet they have, next to New York, the most cases. You look at what's going on in Florida, Texas, and other red states. There's no lockdowns. They seem to be doing, I wouldn't say just fine, because I don't know what state is actually doing just fine, but they're not doing any worse off than the blue states like New York and California. So in LA, they're now on a arrest spree. They're arresting people left, right, and center for violating these lockdowns. Let's take a look at a tweet by the LA sheriff on what he has to say about the situation. During the month, so this is right from the sheriff's department. During the month of December, 235 arrests were made, 7 illegal firearms were taken off the streets, and 1 at-risk juvenile was rescued, blah, blah, blah. I have made it clear that we will seek out and take law enforcement action against all super spreader events. So now they're being called super spreader events. Not just family gatherings, not just congregations, but they're now super spreader events. Notice how when half the country was out burning down America over the summer, we didn't call them super spreaders, did we? Nope. They were riots, peaceful protests. But now, because family members want to gather, or friends want to hang out, or Trump supporters want to rally, they're now called super spreader events. It's funny how the terms and the definitions change based on the actions of specific political parties. How convenient. So the sheriff has now come out and he said, we're straight up arresting everybody. But the weird thing is that just a couple months ago, this same exact sheriff made it very clear that he would not be following the governor's orders, that he would not be wasting his officers' time on going after people for something as ridiculous as hanging out. So what's changed? Why all of a sudden has the sheriff's department in LA now gone at a massive lockdown spurge of arresting people? What's changed? Who's gotten to them? Has the governor put so much pressure on them? Are they threatened for their jobs now? I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, in just December alone, over 235 people have been arrested, and it's outrageous. And this is a horrible situation for Americans nationwide, because we're certain to see things like New York State and other blue states follow. And it's probably because there's been such a pushback now. We've been suing the governors, we've been going after them, and we've been winning these lawsuits. So now they feel the need to puff out their chests and fight back and put pressure on the local law enforcement to say, hey, if you don't get out there and start arresting these people, you're losing jobs, or we're going to make sure that you never see a political increase in salary or climb the ladder again. Whatever it is, they're going to make sure that these law enforcement agencies suffer and pay, and it's not fair. Let's see what the American people have to say about the arrests being made in LA. So as you guys can see here, in LA, sheriffs report 235 arrests enforcing the COVID-19 restrictions. Denise says, stop the insanity, rise up against these dictators, and remove them from office. This nation has been hijacked by dangerous, criminal, communist kleptocrats. I haven't heard that term often. I love it, though. And that is exactly what's going on. It's insanity. These dictators are abusing their powers, and we know they are because we've won lawsuits against them, but they keep pushing and pushing the American people to... I mean, how hard do you have to push everybody? To what point do you allow it to get before the American people start fighting back? Because we know this is unconstitutional. What laws have actually been put in place to give these officers the right to actually now go and arrest people? I'd like to actually see the law, because as far as I'm concerned, they're nothing more than mandates. Mask wearing is a mandate. It's not a law, which is why I laugh when I see stores put signs saying it's against the law. It's actually not against the law. There's been no law passed into legislation that says it's a law. Now, I will wear my mask out of respect for other people, but I still laugh at the fact that stores seem to think that it's a law. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. So it is insane. They need to be removed from office. Newsom already has a pending impeachment petitioning against him. Other governors in other states have actually impeachment proceedings being placed right now. So it's a very ballsy move for these guys to continue their attack on their constituents. Debbie says, I'm sure the mayor's telling them to make up the lost revenue this way. That's a good point. Is the state in such bad financial trouble that they've now come out and said, listen, we got to start arresting people, arrest them for whatever, because we need the money? California's broke. New York State is broke. That is why we are seeing so many people flee these two states at record pace. New York State is doing so poorly as far as population decrease is concerned that we are now at the risk of losing a congressional seat. That is how many people have left New York State and are now fleeing to states like Florida, where they're able to live in a free red state, where they're able to make decisions themselves like adults instead of being treated like little children. So you've got a max exodus from California, from New York State, all fleeing out, and with that flee goes the money. So this could be a very sneaky opportunity for these governors now to say, start arresting people left, right, and center, start finding them, find them to the hill, and we'll get our money back. I mean, look at that one gym in California that's been fined over $2 million. Every day they continue to fine them $15,000, yet the gym refuses to close. So I do find it interesting that gyms and other small businesses have fought back and won, and there's nothing that the state can do to shut them down. So now they know they've lost that fight. It's almost as if they're saying, okay, go after the people now. We need to go after the households that are having more than 10 people gather. Let's go hit them up for money. Let's go throw them in jail. Let's try to make our point or get our point across by arresting and locking down these people. They're losing every single case. They're losing every single fight, yet they continue to push. Let's take a look at a couple other keyboard comments, and then we're going to go head over to the CDC tracker cam, where we're going to look at the data and we're going to see for ourselves that lockdowns continue to not work. If you got a drink, cheers to you guys. It's almost midnight, the last day of the most hellish year that we've ever experienced. Ronaldo says, keep locking those anti-mask morons up. You should build a wall around these idiots and let them just infect each other and be done with it. Well, Ronaldo, science has already proven to everybody, except for you, that mask wearing and lockdowns don't work, because California and New York State have been locked down wearing masks for the last 50 years. And we don't see the numbers decrease. We're not curbing any pandemic. So I think it's a very ridiculous statement to make. It's not working. It's been proven not to work. Yet there's a lot of people out there, funny enough, that still claim to think that mask wearing is the answer. I mean, we've followed the science. The science says that New York State has about 0.17% death rate to population. That's the highest death rate in all of America. We've been wearing masks since May, June. We've been locked down all summer long. We're about to go back into another lockdown. California isn't a full-blown lockdown. I mean, nothing's opened over there. So it doesn't work. Science and data tells us it doesn't work, but so many people are convinced and swear by it. I don't know who's crazier. People for not wanting to wear a mask, or people for believing that masks work. Lee says, it is amazing how the news media did not mention how many real criminals were arrested for real crimes. It is absurd to see what their focus is. Not real crimes, because the new DA just lets them go. So now they found a new group of criminals, a population that does not comply with their draconian COVID-19 laws. How crazy is this? That they just, Newsom, can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I did post about it a few weeks back. It was something like 20,000 criminals were going to be set free. And these criminals who have committed hideous crimes like murder, he was trying to get set free because the jails were overpopulated, or maybe they couldn't maintain social distancing guidelines. Why are criminals in states like New York and drug addicts preferred now over the common people? It is so bad that we are now giving the vaccine to criminals in prison and drug addicts before we give it to our own senior citizens in nursing homes. That's what's going on right here in New York State. It is that bad. The whole thing is backwards. We're prioritizing, and it's very scary, but we're prioritizing criminals ahead of senior citizens because they can't maintain social distancing guidelines in prisons, because the state is worried about a lawsuit. Who the hell cares about a lawsuit if criminals who have murdered people, who are on death row, die because of COVID? I'm sorry, I don't wish death upon anybody, but they are the last people I can care less about. So it doesn't make sense that we are putting criminals ahead of the everyday person. It's a great point, Lee. I love it. Only time will tell. The madness continues. 2020 is almost over, but 2021 isn't looking any better. Amanda says, good people of LA, run. Get out of that county as fast as you can. That's what's happening. It's happening all over the state. It's happening in New York State. People are leaving by the masses. John says, meanwhile, LA streets are filled with drug dealers, cartel, and criminal gang members, and this is how the city uses law enforcement. When is the big one finally going to cause California to sink into the Pacific? Half of America wants to know that. I mean, I see comments all the time about, can California just kind of detach its liberal self and float away and maybe hit Hawaii, connect to Hawaii? I mean, they would be a perfect match for each other, because I don't know what's going on there, but it's almost like they're putting something in the Pacific Ocean that they're all getting cuckoo off of, because I've never seen such craziness amongst a group of people that we do right now. And we can't speak for all of them. I've got a lot of family in California. I love them because most of them are Republican and conservative, and we have very similar thinking. But the rest of the state, San Francisco, other parts, they seem to follow the narrative. They seem to be okay with the narrative. And we just don't get it over here on the East Coast. There's a lot that we don't understand. I don't know. Maybe it's a California thing, but the whole thing just seems a bit nuts to us sitting here in New York. It's a very good point. LA is riddled with drug dealers, cartel, and criminal gang members, and this is how the city uses law enforcement. It's horrific. Can you believe? And listen, we're not even talking about the police going out and busting up 1,000-party gathering. We're talking about underground parties. This is what's going on. If we go back to this tweet here, we take a little bit lower. The county has enacted some of the toughest restrictions on the state as confirmed COVID-19 cases continue to rise and bed capacity intensive care units reach alarming levels. As of Tuesday, the county reported 7,000 hospitalizations, up 1,000% from 2 months ago. Again, what is going on in California that they can't get a grip on this? Because they're locking everybody down and they're maxing out ICU units. So I have to assume they're not doing something right. Do they not have enough hospital beds? Is this something that the healthcare system's going to have to rethink moving forward? But whatever they're doing, they're completely screwing this up, because I don't see New York having the same issue, and we're about to look at some data in just a second. The county has now already surpassed 10,000 COVID-19 deaths, with 274 new deaths reported on Wednesday. Obviously, they're doing this to reduce the spread. Let's take a look at what some of the people in California actually have to think. 10,000 deaths out of a total LA County population of over 10 million. Guess what that means? A mortality rate of 0.001%. Yes, you read that correctly. A SARS-CoV-2 death rate of only 0.001%. This entire pandemic/quarantine is a lie. Those arrested by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department should sue for violation of their civil rights, period. Let that number digest for a second. 0.001%. That is the number that we're referring to. So it really leads me to believe that we're overplaying this thing and that we really don't have a pandemic issue, but we have a limited hospital issue. We have a limited facility issue. That's the real issue. And that's what I've been kind of arguing about this entire time. I'm not undermining coronavirus. I'm not undermining the fact that people are dying, because it's very sad. But I don't think that's the biggest issue that we face. I think the issue that we face, and this is one that the healthcare system is going to have to get a grip on, that they've been misusing their money. They have not planned properly for maxing out hospitals. They haven't planned properly for emergency pandemic situations. When coronavirus broke in China, we watched it very carefully. I have in-laws in China, so we were very much in tune with what's going on. I lived in China for 10 years. My family lives in China now, my wife's side. So we paid very close attention to what was going on. The reason that China nipped this in the butt so fast wasn't because all of a sudden the virus miraculously disappeared in 2 months. No, that wasn't it. China threw hospitals up in record-breaking time. I mean, they literally built hospitals within weeks. They were able to facilitate the millions of people who needed immediate treatment fast. Hence the reason China only has 4,600 odd deaths in the entire country. 1.7 billion people and only 4,600 deaths. Now, if that number is true, if it is in fact accurate, which is another whole show in itself, but if it is true, I have to give the credit to the fact that they threw these hospitals up, and you can go back and Google it. They literally built hospitals in weeks to house all of these people. And they were temporary too. They built them up, took them down, done. They were able to treat these cases at record-breaking pace. America is incapable of facilitating something of this scale. And I think that's the real reason that we are seeing such an issue. It's not the fact that coronavirus is that deadly of a virus, because it's not. I don't care what you say, it's not. The numbers say otherwise. The fact that New York City right now has a live stream going for the setup for tonight's ball drop leads me to believe that we're really not in a pandemic. The fact that we have to debate whether we're in a pandemic leads me to believe that we're not actually in a pandemic. So I really have to pin this whole thing down, especially in states like California. I have to blame a lot of the healthcare industry for this, because as Americans, we pay a fortune for our healthcare, an absolute fortune. It's disgusting how much we pay. We pay a fortune for medicine, we pay a fortune for surgeries, we pay a fortune just to go see a doctor about a cold. So we are paying our share. What is the healthcare system doing with that money? Where is all that money going? Because it's certainly not going towards the hospitals, because they can't even handle everybody catching the flu at the same time, let alone a pandemic like coronavirus. So I think that's the real issue that we all face. And I think when we see things like this, 0.001%, 10,000 deaths out of 10 million people, I think that's the real issue here, is that hospitals just can't keep up, and they are the ones who are going to have to rethink this. America does not have to suffer because the healthcare industry got it wrong. That is my final opinion on the fact of the matter. The county has enacted some of the toughest restrictions in the state. As confirmed, COVID-19 cases continue to rise, and bed capacity at intensive care units reaches alarming levels, which should be proof to anyone thinking person that those restrictions don't work and or are counterproductive. Again, I disagree. I don't think it has to do with this at all, because look at New York. We are not overrun right now. You've got New York City, 11 million people. You'd think the hospitals would be overrun. They're not. Maybe New York is doing a better job in facilitating patients that need care. Something's not going right in California, and the California residents shouldn't have to suffer because the healthcare industries are royally screwing it up. Peggy Power says, I find it interesting that the police in a city that released real criminals during the virus have nothing better to do with their time than to look for and arrest adults for making decisions themselves. Absolutely. Why are we spending our tax dollars on busting up a 10-person party or busting up a college party? Is that really what we want to be doing with our taxpayers' dollars right now? Running around town telling people they can't gather for New Year's Eve? Is that really a good use of our tax dollars? Or should that money be going towards the hospitals to create more ICU units so we can actually take care of people once they arrive? Studley says those who rioted, looted, and burned businesses and beat innocent people were not arrested. Many violent criminals released due to COVID, but let's arrest and lock up those trying to earn a living. That's progressive liberal logic at its best. What a phenomenal comment to end on. Studley, I love it. I love it. That is the comment of the day. He's absolutely right. Rioting, looting, burning businesses, beating innocent people in my home city, Rochester, New York, which went viral, where these punks beat the living crap out of an elderly couple or an elderly lady with a 2x4. Security guard was shot and killed for defending his buddy's jewelry store. Yet Kamala Harris is bailing them out with GoFundMe accounts. And now we're running around locking up people. How do our politicians not see how ridiculous they are being right now? Has anybody sat them down and said, could we just dissect this for a second? Could we just take a minute for you to realize how insane you are acting? Have you not read the millions of tweets by frustrated Americans? Have they not read the comments? What goes through their heads when 90% of America is screaming, you are getting it wrong, you are not going to get reelected? You'd think they would make different decisions based on how the American people feel today. But they continue to lock us down, they try to arrest us, and we keep winning lawsuit after lawsuit. Let's take a look at the CDC COVID tracker cam now on what the data says, because this is really interesting to look at. So California has a problem. They're now arresting people. LA County, 235 arrests just in December, breaking up super spreader parties. That's what they're calling them. So we'll take a look at this. The data here shows us deaths in the last 7 days in the total count. Okay, last 7 days. It's a good reflection. California, tight lockdowns, totally locked down. The last 7 days, 1,600 deaths. 1,600 deaths. Let's see what's going on in Florida. No lockdown, no mask mandate, like nothing. Texas, Florida, nothing going on. Go about your business. If you're worried, stay inside. We'll see you guys when the vaccine arrives. So in California, the last 7 days, you got 1,603 deaths. Completely locked down. Sheriffs running around town arresting people for having super spreader gatherings. 1,600 deaths. Let's take a look at Florida. Florida, interesting. 655 deaths. Nearly 3 times less. No lockdown whatsoever. Do you now see why we love Governor DeSantis? Do you now see why we'd gladly trade Cuomo for DeSantis any day? And why he's getting praised. I loved the article I read this morning on him. He refuses to get the coronavirus vaccine because he said he doesn't deserve it ahead of all the people in his state who need it first. That is a real hero of a politician. That man deserves an award and the credit that is due from all of the American people for how he's acted. So in Florida, the last 7 days, 655 deaths, no lockdown. California, in the last 7 days, 1,600. So you can't even play the, well, it's the virus doesn't attack as hard in the summer, because you're both in warm climates right now. Both warm climates. 1,600 versus 655. Lockdowns don't work. They have got it all wrong in California. I don't know what they're doing over there, but the lockdowns are not working. Texas in the last 7 days, 1,100. Texas is very hardcore freedom on their situation. Okay, it's no surprise that there's a bit higher of a death rate, but still, only 1,100 deaths versus California's 1,600 in the last 7 days. Texas has had 500 less deaths than California. Texas is completely open. Let's go over to New York and see what New York's doing in the last 7 days. So you've got New York, total deaths. Now we're kind of a hybrid here. New York isn't totally locked down, but we're really not allowed to go out and hang out, and you know, our gatherings are somewhat restricted to a point. And we only have 675 deaths. So we are out. I mean, I go out to the restaurants and the bars and they're packed. So we haven't completely locked it down. We are allowed to dine in restaurants, those that want to be open. And we only have 675. So California completely shut down, 1,600 deaths in the last 7 days. New York, only 675, semi-lockdown. Florida, wide open, 655. Isn't it funny that the state that has the most wide open and least restrictions has the least deaths? Our governors keep telling us to follow the science. Well, we're following it. And the science is telling us that masks, lockdowns aren't the answer. I'm a firm believer that herd immunity is the ultimate answer. I think we've proven that time and time again over centuries of pandemics. Take a look at what happened in the flu pandemic. And I know people get so wound up that we compare coronavirus to the flu, but the flu pandemic, for those of you who aren't aware, the flu pandemic, 50 million people died in 2 years. 50 million. That is how many people died in 2 years. We have about, what, 1 million deaths in the last year? This thing's been going on since about December. We can conclude that it's been a year about now. 1 million versus 50 million in 2 years when the flu pandemic broke. So yes, I am going to compare this to the flu. We have flu shots. People still get the flu. We're going to have the coronavirus vaccine. Guess what? People are still going to get the virus. They're still going to get coronavirus. What are we going to do? Are we going to hide in the bubble for the rest of our lives? At some point, we need to start living again. And if the reason that California is suffering so badly, if the reason that people are arresting everybody left, right, and center is because the healthcare system has got it horrifically wrong, then shame on the healthcare system. They need to start investing in better healthcare. But to make the American people suffer after we pay a fortune for healthcare is absurd. To shut my business down because the healthcare industry can't get their act together is completely wrong on all accounts. And they are the ones who need to take a minute and digest what they got wrong and start investing into their facilities. And then the next step, once we get through coronavirus, is to now say and start telling doctors, can you stop throwing band-aids on every illness that comes about? Let's start solving the root of the problem. How about America focus on its health? How about we focus on our diet? How about we stop eating processed crap? How about we jog a little bit more? How about we get out there and stop eating fast food? You know we have a problem when America deems liquor stores and McDonald's as essential, but shuts down hair salons and gyms. You know America has it all backwards. Sums up 2020 perfectly, but here we are. It's finally over. In a few hours, we're going to bid adieu to 2020. We're going to head into 2021. And here's my New Year's Eve message for all of you. This year has brought about so much change, so much frustration, so much stress and anger to all of us. Businesses have collapsed. People's lives have been destroyed. But we got to look for the opportunity. We have to look for the opportunity because change is going to happen. whether we like it or not, and it's going to happen at record-breaking pace. But with change comes opportunity. I would have never started this show unless we had the pandemic. I saw the opportunity. I saw the direction businesses was headed. I lost a lot, but we can't sit and cry about it. We have to look at the angles. We have to look at the opportunity. At some point, you're going to have to say F it and just jump. And that is what I encourage all of you to do as you get ready to head into 2021. Screw it. Start that business you always wanted to start. Take that leap of faith. Take up the hobby you never thought you'd do. Because life is short. We've realized that more now than ever. Life is short. And you don't want to go your whole life right up to the end wishing you wish you took that leap of faith in yourself. So welcome the change, welcome the opportunity. Instead of going into 2021 thinking, Jesus Christ, is this going to be as awful as 2020? Look for that opportunity, take that leap of faith, and I think you'll surprise yourself just how successful and rewarding the adventure will be. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Thank you for joining me. You've been watching You Made It Political. Have a wonderful night. Happy New Year to everybody around the world. I love you guys, and we'll see you in 2021. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show, or leave us a review on iTunes. And if you like our show or want to know more, check out youmadeitpolitical.com.